So the first question I have for all of you is, how many people in here want to live longer? Raise your hand. But is this what you're looking forward to on your next birthday? No. What about that? So you want to live longer so you can use a cane and hobble around. Well, me neither. This is what I want for my patients. I don't want my patients at the bottom of the vista asking, what was it like? What was the view like? You know, I can't make it up the hill. I want my patients on the top of the vista.
Now you might be asking yourself why 2 real estate agents are sponsoring an event focused on health and longevity. Well, Claire and I may be the first holistic realtors you've ever met. We want all good things for our clients. And like the series says, this is the beginning of our series. Dr. Board is our first of the series called What's Generational Wealth Without Generational Health? So
we're always helping our clients, friends, and family members increase their generational wealth through real estate. But in the last few years, those same friends and family members have had frustrating, sometimes painful medical conditions that took a lot of research and out-of-the-box thinking to get relief.
So one of the sources our family has come to depend on is Dr. Board. Founder of Atlanta Functional Medicine. Now, I hope I get this right. Yeah. Dr. Board initially received her MD at Emory University School of Medicine and went on to be an assistant professor. I'm looking to make sure I got it right. And then fellow of anesthesiology and pain management at Stanford University School of Medicine. She has expanded her medical career from anesthesiology to pain management to gynecology to functional medicine, becoming the founder of Atlanta Functional Medicine in 2012. Dr. Board is a featured conference speaker throughout the functional and medical community, and we are fortunate to have her with us tonight.
Without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Elizabeth Court.
Oh my gosh, look who's trying to renew their warranty and still enjoy the ride. Okay, and that could be you. That could be you. So the first question I have for all of you is, how many people in here want to live longer? Raise your hand. All right, you want to live longer. Okay. But is this what you're looking forward to on your next birthday? No. What about that? So you want to live longer so you can use a cane and hobble around? No. Well, me neither. This is what I want for my patients. I don't want my patients at the bottom of the vista asking, what was it like? What was the view like? You know, I can't make it up the hill. I want my patients on the top of the vista. I want my patients to do all the things they ever wanted to do, especially when they retire. If they want to play golf, by golly, I want to see them playing golf. And if they want to go snorkeling in the Caribbean, I want to see them snorkeling. We didn't work this hard our whole life to live in a hospital bed. So this presentation's for you, and it really is just focused on you, your longevity, but also your physical health. And that doesn't matter if you're still in your career at your peak, or if you're getting ready to retire, or if you're just thinking about what career to go into. You can start now, it's never too late. But stop and think for a moment, what kind of physical health you would want to be 5 years from now. Think about it. What kind of things would you still want to do? And what kind of physical health would you want to be 10 years from now? Close your eyes and imagine what you would look like 10 years from now. What are you going to be doing? Maybe 20 years from now. And then as you sat there and you thought about these for just a moment, then ask yourself, are you losing sight today? All the things that you do, are you losing sight of what really matters? What really matters in your life? So what I'm really asking you here is, what is it that you really and truly desire out of life? What do you really want? Because for a lot of people, when we think about retirement, for example, for a lot of people, it's like, I just want to spend more time with my family. Some people are like, I want to get away from my family. I want to spend time by myself in nature. And then other people, they got a bucket list. Anybody got a bucket list? They got a bucket list. They want to do the crazy stuff they never had time to do earlier in their life because they were so busy chasing that dollar or making ends meet. Some people keep working, like my husband. Some of us want to work until, like Dr. Pete Dawson was still editing textbooks just before he passed away. So if you want to live a long life and you want to be productive and you want to be active and you don't want to be limited by anything, you better work on your brain. It's important. And you're going to need a musculoskeletal system. And if you want to keep that healthy, you're going to need joints because it works better with good joints. And you're going to need a cardiovascular system to carry all those nutrients to that brain and to those muscles. So I'm going to start with cognitive health. Now, this is stats from 2023. And the thing about Alzheimer's disease, which is so devastating, is it's a disease that takes hostages. What do I mean by that? If you look at the turquoise section here, over 11 million Americans take care of patients who have Alzheimer's disease. And those people are not being paid. It's an unpaid job that many of us do. So it's a very selfish disease because it takes hostages and it's socially invasive. It affects everybody's life. But it's also very common. In fact, 1 in 3 seniors are going to die from Alzheimer's disease. And if you look on the side, the lifetime risk for women, if they make it to the age of 45, anybody want to guess? Once you pass the age of 45, what is the lifetime risk for a woman to have Alzheimer's? It's 1 in 5. That means several of us in the room may develop Alzheimer's disease. In men, it's a little better. It's 1 in 10. But as women, we need to pay attention to this, okay? And it's also a deadly disease. So if you added all the breast cancer, which we make a big deal about, and all the prostate cancer, which we make a big deal, if you added them together, it wouldn't even equal the amount of deaths due to Alzheimer's disease. But it's also a very expensive disease. And it's a sneaky disease. So I love this stat. It said that basically 7 out of 10 elderly are interested in finding out if they have a risk of Alzheimer's, but only if there was something they could do about it. And I'm going to show you that there are some things that we can do about it. But only 4 in 10 will actually talk to their doctor and ask for a cognitive assessment. Who's had a cognitive exam before? Anybody? Yeah, well, you're my patient, so. All right, there you go. So we've spent over $600 billion. This is an older slide. And how many worked? None. Over $600 billion, and none of them worked. But what I want to tell you is that there are some very brave neurologists, Dr. Richard Isaacson and Dr. Dale Bredesen. They were neurologists who left the pack, went out maverick, and they have found ways to improve cognitive function. And they have some great books, and this is really for you to see. So Dale Bredesen believes that Alzheimer's is not due, the reason that drugs don't work is it's not one drug, one disease, but a lot of different hits, a lot of different insults to the body that need to be corrected. And let me tell you something beautiful about the body. And anybody who's worked with me, and I have one of my assistants here who's really seen this, you don't have to get everything perfect. You just have to get a few things better, and the body heals itself. Now, when I first heard that, I thought, that sounds like BS. But then as an anesthesiologist, I've sat in the OR, and I watched the surgeon suture people together. They don't suture every micromillimeter of tissue together. They put what are called approximate sutures. And who does the rest of the healing? The body. So anybody who's had patients in the ICU, when the lungs get a little bit better, the kidneys are coming back. The liver's coming back. The gut's coming. That's how it works. And so just some very simple things. You don't have to do a lot of hard things to improve your cognitive function. And these are some of the books that you might want to look at. And actually, I love this book. It's actually on tape, Fighting Alzheimer's, How to Keep Your Brain Healthy. You can listen to it on tape if you're too busy. So this is real important. We got to enjoy what we do that makes us healthy. Because if we don't enjoy it, we're not going to do it, all right? So you got to enjoy it. And this is Pete Dawson, who was basically editing textbooks on his deathbed when he passed away. And this was my husband and some other dentists and I went for a walk, and he wanted to come with us. And then one of the points I want to make about that is when you're out there walking and being healthy, you can infect other people with that by encouraging them to do the same thing. And that's what we did with Pete. So why is it so important for you to enjoy the things that will extend your warranty? Because depression by itself is a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. So this is a study showing that it actually increases mild cognitive impairment. But the problem we're stuck with is we put you on an antidepressant antidepressants increase Alzheimer's disease. So we're going to have to find natural ways to get rid of our own depression. And I'm going to show you some of those. Benzodiazepines. How many people ever take a benzodiazepine? I've taken one before when they had to work on my teeth. So benzos, regular use of benzos, absolutely associated with an increased risk of Alzheimer's disease. When you can't remember, do you get anxious? Yeah, you get anxious. And so what we do to our seniors many times is we just give them Valium or Ativan. And yet we're making their cognitive decline worse. And there are other ways to work on this. So the longer acting benzos are the most dangerous. The longer the use, the more, look at the use of a benzo for greater than 6 months, 84% increased risk of dementia. I'm not going for that. It's not what I'm going for. So think about your loved ones. Think about yourself. Think about ways to calm yourself other than the easy way, benzos. And what about drugs that like anticholinergics that help us with bladder control, tricyclic antidepressants that we've been on? All of them can contribute to Alzheimer's disease. And you've probably heard the recent research about PPIs. Anybody heard about the PPIs? Well, we knew this in functional medicine for quite a while. PPIs, those are things like Prilosec, Prevacid, Nexium. You don't have to raise your hand, but I bet there's at least one person on one of those drugs. And those increase, in addition to osteoporosis and other problems, they actually increase Alzheimer's disease. Why is that? That's because medications, virtually every medication, robs us of at least one nutrient. And so let's take a typical patient that I would have seen when I did internal medicine. I did an internship in internal medicine. They might have been on a diabetic drug, right? Like maybe metformin. They would have been on maybe a little bit of amlodipine, a little antihypertensive. Maybe they added a little bit of hydrochlorothiazide or Lasix to that. And maybe they were also on a statin. That's a pretty typical cocktail that a lot of Americans are on. Look at every single one of them would deplete that individual of what? It's pretty obvious, coenzyme Q10, but a lot of other things. And these are nutrients that are vital to the mitochondria. Now, why are the mitochondria such a big deal? Now, remember, those are the organelles inside the cell that are the powerhouse. They make the energy. And the tissue that uses the most energy in the body is which tissue? It's the brain. Exercise increases the replication of mitochondria. Did you guys know that? Who knew that? All right, and my patients are there. Exercise is like somebody playing Al Green, you know what I mean, to your mitochondria. So exercise helps the mitochondria divide. So you make baby mitochondria when you exercise. Every time you exercise, you're making new mitochondria. Isn't that awesome? When the mitochondria ain't happy, nobody's happy. So remember that. Take care of them. The mitochondria, this is an image of a cell, is the powerhouse of the cell. And let me tell you where all the action is going on, right here in the citric acid cycle. All right? Here's another picture of it. So when we're spinning that citric acid cycle, we're producing energy. But if you look, you need all these nutrients. We just talked about them. If you can see in this, if you can see it all on here, there's a ton of bees. I call the bees the worker bees because they're doing all the heavy lifting. They don't get any attention. Only B12, it's like the diva. Everybody cares about B12. But what about B1 and B2 and B3 and B5 and B6 and B9? They all play a very big role too. And biotin for our hair is B7. So you really need all of that. But even if you get all of that and you don't have CoQ10, you can't make a whole lot of energy. So in order to make that 34 to 36 ATP, which is the currency of energy for each molecule of glucose, we got to have all of it. All right? Now, let me go back and show you again what those medications are doing. And then we wonder why people have all these chronic conditions. And when I was putting this slide together, I noticed something very interesting. What's the first word of most of those drugs? Anti. And it occurred to me they're like anti-life because they're robbing us of nutrients. Now, I want to be real clear. These are life-saving drugs. And I put my patients on them. And you can be on them. But you just want to be able to compensate for what they're doing. And we can do that. That's using our brain for good. We can do that. We can test you and we can compensate you for what you need. All right, very good. So it's really getting down to the care and feeding the mitochondria. Now, the mitochondria are like lots of this, not too much, just a little bit of the central column, and we really want to avoid toxicants, infections. And the reason I put moderate exercise is because the truth is excessive exercise is not good. Is not good for the mitochondria. So moderate, regular exercise is excellent, okay? So what about that? Look at that. That looks like we just got that recently on our plate, didn't we? That looks like Kale Me Crazy right there, like what he was picking from. And so Hippocrates said to us, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And if you just can't get busy and you're not interested in Hippocrates, what about someone else who we have a lot of respect for? Steve Jobs. He said, look, if you do not use food as your medicine now, medicine will become your food. Good warning. So food can be medicine. So, and now if you want to, you can actually take your nitric oxide, we're going to talk about it a little bit more, but take your nitric oxide by now with water if your color was a not bright magenta or pink. So go right ahead with that, okay? And then at the end of the event, we'll retest you and see if you turned it bright pink. But what I want you to look on this graph is notice that not a single food has every superpower, does it? Now, I think almonds might make it into the decathlon, right? Because it's really good in lots of areas, but it's not the perfect thing to do for fasting or caloric restriction. And the point I'm trying to make with this is food can be your medicine, but you're gonna need a variety, right? So I have a saying that I use a lot with my patients called variety confers stability. Variety of exercise, variety of friends, variety of microbiome, variety of food, all right? The only thing that you don't need variety is sleep. You need to get plenty of sleep. So we're gonna stick with a good, don't challenge the sleep thing. You need sleep every time. All right, so what about exercise? Exercise and cognitive, this is Larry's parents who are both 93 and 94 and going strong. We're at a corn maze. See, I have sneaky ways to get people to exercise. Let's do a corn maze. All right, that's how we did. I'm always doing that. So it increases ketosis. It increases something called brain-derived neurotropic factor. That is like a pheromone for nerve cells. It gets your nerve cells to connect. We didn't think that nerve cells could do that, but we found out with scanning electron micrographs and we could actually see nerve cells start to grow together, and BDNF is what does it. How do I make BDNF? Fish oil, exercise, learning something new, not just doing crosswords, not just doing Sudoku, but really learning pickleball, ballroom dancing, something that engages movement and listening and touch, all the different senses. When you get involved in something, who's tried to learn something new as they got a little bit older? Anybody? That is so good for you, real good for BDNF. Okay. Exercise can be fun. Look at this person with their dog. Animals are great because we gotta go take them outside. It keeps us active. All right, so exercise, very important. We can have baby neurons. They are actually gone through neurogenesis. Improves mood by dopamine. So everybody loves dopamine. Who doesn't love dopamine? We love some dopamine, right? That's why people overdrink and overeat and overspend. And when we fall in love, we got that big boost of dopamine. But you can get it from exercise, all right? A lot of people are worried they don't have good thyroid function. But exercise actually increases the sensitivity of the cell to the thyroid hormone. So sometimes it's not the level of thyroid, it's the sensitivity of the cell. And one of the ways to keep it sensitive is through exercise. All right. Now, sleep. Now, I said this, I love sleeping. Who doesn't like to sleep? Sleeping is fun. It's actually when the brain detoxes, but you do need to rule out things like sleep apnea. You want to get plenty of sleep. In women, we lose our progesterone, and that makes it difficult for us to sleep. So we could use melatonin. But if you're going to watch your phone at night, try to move your phone far away or turn it off, put it on airplane mode. And then if you're going to look at the TV or you're going to look at your electronic things, use your yellow or amber glasses. Anybody use those? You've heard of those before? Great. Because you don't want to block your body's ability to make melatonin. Also, if you have to get up in the middle of the night, use a red night light and it won't keep you up. It won't interfere with your sleep, but we don't want you falling. You're not allowed to fall. No falling allowed. There we go. So what about intestinal health? Now, this is a difficult concept to get, and I'm going to try to explain it to you. But you've heard of leaky gut before? So leaky gut basically means intestinal permeability. So if you go to your GI doctor, don't say leaky gut, he will roll your eyes. He'll roll his eyes. But if you say intestinal permeability, he might listen to you. So that's the fancy word for it. That's what's in all the research. Leaky gut can lead to leaky brain, so that's important for the brain as well. But what I want to show you is, if you notice here, even when you're eating food, if you don't actually break the food down entirely, if there are gaps between the cells, like you see here. So the gaps between the cells, that's damaged. So the borders have been broken and things can get across. They can be toxins, they can be chemicals, and they can actually be food, even healthy food. If it gets across, and it can actually increase circulating immune complexes. And from there, in addition to leading to malabsorption and nutrient deficiency, it can actually trigger autoimmunity. And there are a lot of bacteria that are known. Even when I was in medical school 1,000,000 years ago, we had to learn that certain bacteria lead to autoimmunity. And it's still true today. It can also lead to inflammation. Now, if you get inflammation in the bloodstream, what's it going to do to the gut border? it's going to make it worse. And you're going to get more damage of the gut lining. So you've got to quench that inflammation. If you get enough inflammation going on, then you could actually breach the blood-brain barrier and you could have intestinal permeability. So maintaining a healthy border is very important. And so this is a diagram of the brain. It looks a lot like the gut, doesn't it? It's kind of similar. So think about what's happening in the blood here. In the blood, where I have the little blood pack here, if you've got a lot of inflammatory cells, if they get across and into a broken border into the brain, you've got inflammation in the brain. And didn't we say who doesn't like oxidative stress and inflammation? The mitochondria. And if the mitochondria ain't happy, what's going to happen to the brain? You may have depression. You may have cognitive decline. So in my patients, I have to make sure they don't have inflammation in the gut if I want to work on the brain. What about relationships? Relationships are really important, and I don't want to forget about that. You can be sabotaged by someone you live with, or you can be supported by someone you live with. All right? And so here's a picture of my husband's mom. She's got the fire hat on. She's probably 89 in this picture. She is playing with her grandchildren, her children. She's engaged with everybody. And by doing that, we now know from research that when you have large social networks and lots of social support, not just one person, but lots of people, that's associated with improved global cognition. So you visiting your friends, you're not wasting time, actually. You're improving your brain. And when you have someone that is starting to have memory problems, talking about the old times, bringing their friends together. That's what we try to do with my mom. I know Larry does that with his parents. Try to get them together, do Zoom calls, whatever. Talk about the old times, get together. It's very important. And it's fun. It's fun to do. So this is actually Ashley, who works in my office. I wanted to run a race. I got Ashley to run with me. A couple of my girlfriends, they wanted to run it. And then one of my girlfriend's husbands, he came and ran. We had a whole bunch of people. We were infecting everybody with exercise. And it was fun. So where does the power to change lie? In our desire. I'm going to go back to that word desire. And that's how we're going to remember all the things that we want to do to improve our cognitive function. So for brain health, we want to remember diet. What do you think the E stands for? Exercise. What about the S? Sleep. What about the I? How about the R? Well, close. Relationships. Rest is important. Relationships and stress reduction. What about the E? I didn't talk about the E. The E stands for extras. So in our practice, I will say, I don't like to just give people supplements. I want to see what you need. What is it that you need? And that's why we do testing, and we try to find out. And I like to retest and see, you don't need that anymore. You need that once a week. You need that twice a week. I want you to get as much of it that you can from the food, from the exercise, from the things that you can get from the natural. So E is for extra at the end. We cannot supplement ourselves into good health. We have to act and eat. And I always say the two things, and Susie knows what it is. It's what you eat and what you do with your feet. That's most of what happens, okay? Especially for chronic illness. I'm going to go through this case, and I think it's worth it. I don't know we have a lot of time, but this is a beautiful case. This is the first case of anybody that I treated for cognitive decline. So she came in with her husband. He did all the talking, okay? She didn't say anything to me. She was silent. Beautiful woman. Her daughter had noticed some memory issues right after they retired. And you'll see that a lot of times. People will go right after retirement and they go kind of downhill. That's a very tricky time, a very, I think, vulnerable time for people because they have purpose and suddenly they don't have purpose. This gentleman, he was actually a psychotherapist, brought his wife to the local neurologist. He started on one of those drugs that doesn't work, put her on one of those drugs, but it's all we had. And a year went by and there was no improvement. And then another year went by and there was no improvement, except now she had depression. And so then he read Bredesen's book and traveled way up from South Georgia to come see me. And she came in with a broken foot. And I said, well, what happened? Did you fall off a train? Did you fall off a horse? No, she missed one step and fractured her foot. And it wasn't healing. And it had happened about 9 or 10 months ago. Now she's on bisphosphonates. So I'm like, well, the bisphosphonates didn't do their job. What happened? So she had other difficulties. And if you see what she's doing, she's eating organic. She's getting a lot of things right. She's doing yoga. She's walking. But she's still eating wheat. She's still eating dairy, she's still eating sugar, and she's drinking wine. And why is she drinking wine? Good. That's one reason. Because she's anxious. And just like the Xanax, wine binds the GABA receptor, which calms you. All right? And what is now, I'm not going to knock wine too much, right? A little bit's okay. But wine is a neurotoxin, especially when you are having memory difficulties, all right? It's not a great thing to pour on top of everything else. These are her labs. So this is amazing. I actually showed this. I have a PA in cardiology. He said these labs are amazing. Even he was amazed by it. I was amazed by this. These are her initial labs, and I won't go through every single thing, but what I want you to pay attention to is at the bottom here. Fibrinogen, that's a precursor to blood clot. CRP, that's general inflammation. The LP-PLA2, that's vulnerable plaque. That's plaque that's about to rupture, like she could have a heart attack. Her myeloid peroxidase, oxidative stress. Who doesn't like oxidative stress? The mitochondria. We got to get on that. And then her oxidized or damaged LDL is a little bit high. You can see she's already pre-diabetic. She has a sort of a high ferritin, but ferritin will go up sometimes when you have inflammation. And she had Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So she had high antibodies for thyroid. I didn't even touch that. I was like, I don't even have time for that. Let's just start with one thing at a time. Well, this is what we did. And what I want you to see is everything that's in black are not supplements. The only things we added for her, and there's your desire. Do you see the desire? We changed her diet. We gave her daily exercise. We ramped that up and gave her more of a variety, not just walking, some weightlifting. We changed that up a little bit. We gave her magnesium to help with her sleep and her stress instead of the wine, right? We did a stool test to make sure there wasn't intestinal permeability going on. And then we gave her just a very simple mitochondrial support that had a lot of different things that are great for the mitochondria. We tripled her CoQ10 because on the last slide, I don't know if you saw, it was very, very low. And how is she going to make energy for the brain if she doesn't have CoQ10? So we took a bunch of that. We gave her a little bit of hormone. We increased her vitamin D. We gave her a little bit of turmeric and fish oil. So there's not a lot of supplements here, just a little bit. And we're not even thinking we're going to keep her on these for long term. So the extras are the red, all right? Everything was personalized and was precise because we measured before we got started. And we listened to her history, and we blended the history with the measurements to come up with what we're going to do. And I want to show you her hemoglobin in 2 months dropped from 6.1 to 5.7. I didn't even know that was possible. Her vitamin D was 31, came up to 48. Their stool test showed Klebsiella. That's one of the ones that can cause inflammation if it gets across a broken barrier. And she did have a little parasite there. And so I had 2 different scribes. And for those people who've been to the office, I don't know if you guys remember Bash or if you remember Jimmy, that at separate occasions, because they scribed for me different times, one of them said, we think her husband needs the help now. She was so much better on the phone. I couldn't believe it. She was actually, he had to have surgery. She was taking care of his meds. He was confident. She had changed so dramatically. And that's at 2 months. Now at 4 months, look at her labs. But I didn't put her on a statin. How come I didn't put her on a statin? Where's the statin? Well, why would I go to her statin when she already has a low CoQ10? I'm not going to try to poison her. I want to let her body have a chance. Now I'm going to tell you, the husband is highly motivated. Talk about support. It's like having a Gestapo at home. He was watching her like a hawk. And we can do that for our loved ones, right? We can really support them and lovingly stay on them to make the good choices and to give this plan a try. Her homocysteine had dropped. It would drop further. Her CoQ10 doubled. Her ferritin dropped. She's not bleeding to death. The ferritin, which is a storage iron, which is kind of toxic at high levels, that was just a response to inflammation. It came down on its own. Her omega-3 level was perfect. Her trans fats, which are the naughty fats, I didn't change anything. It came down, it's cut in half. It was 0.6 before. And the other thing that I didn't really notice until I was doing this talk a few years ago, her thyroid antibodies were normal. I didn't even treat her thyroid. It was like a second thought. But when she got, like I said before, when you start to get enough things better, the body can heal. And these were her labs. And she did really, really well. And she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and she had a non-healing fracture despite taking bisphosphonates. When she came back to see me at 4 months, her boot was off. Her foot had healed, right? I didn't give her bisphosphonate. I gave her body what her body needed. And how did I know? I'm not God. I listened to her, and I looked at her labs, all right? So it was cute, because when they came to see me this time, they didn't even want to really talk to me. They're like rushing out. I'm like, well, where are you going? I'm so excited. Look how good these labs are. I'm like, aren't you going to be like, isn't this? They're like, we're going to the beach house. We'll see you later. They were going off to live their life. And that's what it's about. He was devastated. She's a beautiful woman. He was devastated that his wife was losing her mind right as they both retired. And he's got his wife back. As long as she stays away from the wine. So I want to tell you this concept of chronic conditions require chronic solutions. I was a pain doctor. I used to give people steroids. I can't give steroids for a chronic condition. Why? Because I'm going to give you osteoporosis and diabetes and obesity and your mind will go a little loopy with all the steroids. So we have to, if we can, for a chronic condition, use a chronic acceptable treatment plan. And lifestyle's there. Now, you got a broken leg, don't come see me. you need to go to the orthopedist. You know, you're coughing up and vomiting blood, don't come see me. Go to the ER. But once we get you stabilized, if you have a chronic condition, functional medicine is a great place. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but what I want to show you is like we were talking about with drugs a lot of times and surgeries, sadly, like steroid injections, there's collateral damage that occurs. And what I want to show you so cool about functional medicine is you get collateral benefits that you didn't even expect. I mean, see, she didn't come to me for her foot. She didn't come to me for her Hashimoto's. She didn't come to me for her diabetes. She came because her husband said she couldn't remember stuff. And look what happened. She's no longer pre-diabetic. Her diarrhea, which she was having, got better. She had excellent cholesterol. Her mood improved. She finally had a healed ankle fracture. She no longer had thyroiditis. Her overall general and vascular inflammation went down. She had increased energy. Her liver and kidney markers improved. And her husband had an active partner again. So we worked on brain health, but it fixed the cardiovascular system and the musculoskeletal system. The cardiovascular system is going to help the brain health. And we need a strong cardiovascular system if we're going to build bone, because we got to get out there and exercise, right? Do you see how everything's so interconnected? And that's the cool thing about functional medicine. That's why if you see functional medicine, a lot of times you'll see a spider web. Why do they use a spider web? Because if you pull on one part of the spider web, the rest of the spider web moves. And that's how the body is. The body is not isolated. The lungs are not never talking to the heart. They're intimately connected. It's all connected. So you guys know about osteoporosis, all right? But what you need to know is that it can lead to death in a certain percentage. Lots of risk factors to consider. But there's a lot of research. These are research papers. The gut, intestinal permeability, intestinal health, very intimately connected to osteoporosis. So people that have ulcerative colitis, they almost always have terrible osteoporosis. There's that doggone PPI again. If you're taking the PPI, that can affect your ability to absorb minerals. And if you don't have minerals, how are you going to build bone? There's my gorgeous Italian husband, and look what we're eating here. So this is the kind of food, this is just a picture of us eating. I mean, this is the kind of food that we try to eat. And this is the kind of food you want. Remember what I said, variety confers stability. If you want to build bone, bone is not made of calcium. How many people went to school with somebody who wrote on a chalkboard? I did. Did you ever see the teacher drop the chalk from her hand here? And what happened to it? I don't want bones like that. That's calcium. That's plain, I think it's calcium carbonate. I believe that's the only thing that's made up of. Your bones are so much more complex. So to think that calcium and vitamin D is all you need is just flat out stupid, all right? Look at all the nutrients you need. These are all playing a central role in bone density. Remember what I said, variety confers stability. I'm not going to talk about hormones, but I have a saying, nothing builds bone like estrogen. So in a man, if you give him an aromatase inhibitor, he will lose bone density because aromatase helps testosterone turn into estrogen. Stop taking bone saboteurs, all right? These are all things that sabotage bone growth. And you've got to get a variety of exercise. Start exercising early. This is a study that they found that children and young girls need to start exercising as adolescents. Now, this is the nitric oxide slide that I promised I would tell you about, which you guys did the exercise. Nitric oxide delivers. Remember when they had all the ships outside the United States and they couldn't get in the ingredient, they couldn't get in the logistics to get the products to the individual? That's like nitric oxide. You can take all the supplements, but if you're not carrying it to the target issue, whether it's your scalp for grow hair, your skin to grow beautiful skin, or your bones, if you don't have good nitric oxide, you can't carry those nutrients. So nitric oxide is very important as well. It also helps you carry oxygen. As you get older, this slide shows you, as you get older, you lose your ability to develop nitric oxide. And it's very connected to the microbiome in the mouth. Yes, the mouth. And then what's the mouth? It's part of the digestive system. It's a very, very important part of the digestive system. So if you actually, the nitric oxide in the little capsules that I gave you guys is a nitrate. You actually swallow that, and you actually collect that and concentrate that in the salivary gland. The salivary gland then releases it, and the bacteria in the mouth convert it to nitric oxide. You swallow that, ooh, you got dilated blood vessels. What's another thing that people take when they want dilated blood vessels? Viagra, Cialis. So what they do is they block the breakdown of nitric oxide. But you, instead of blocking, doing an anti-move, right, you can actually take more to produce more. And it's good for everyone. They actually make a skin cream as well. And if you need any of that, just let us know. So balance and fall prevention. These are the ways that you improve bone density. I wanted to show you about autoimmunity and intestinal permeability. So if you get, when those particular antigens, If they break through broken borders, they can trigger the immune system, because the immune system says, instead of thinking that that was a piece of eggplant, it goes, what the heck was that? Oh my God, that must be something really bad. Go make some antibodies against it, because I don't want that bug getting me. It's not a bug. It's just food that didn't get broken down and it got absorbed, okay? So that can happen. So digestion and absorption is very important. But if you get that across and it develops antibodies, you could actually now have antibodies against your tissue, like arthritis, for example, or lupus, or some of the other ones, okay? These are the bacteria that are actually associated with autoimmune disease. This is an old slide. This is what I was taught way back then. We found out now there's a lot more. And I think this is the tip of the iceberg. I think a lot of things are right. What about the mouth? This is an amazing slide. Look how when you have leaky gum, which is like leaky gut, you have gingivitis, you have dysbiotic bacteria in the mouth, same thing can happen. Because remember, this is the GI tract as well. You can get autoimmunity. Something like 78% of all atheromas that rupture and cause acute coronary disease and death, when at autopsy, guess what kind of bacteria they have? Bacteria from the mouth. So there's a huge connected, my patients, they got to go see the dentist. They got to make sure they're getting really good dental health and good dental hygiene. And we even test sometimes for the bacteria in the mouth. Very important. So your autoimmune disease can affect any of these systems, and it's so important to have a good health. So we talked about desire, same thing, diet, exercise, sleep, intestinal health, relationships, and stress reduction, and evaluate for extras in the cardiovascular system. I'm going to race through these. Eat more of your cholesterol-lowering foods. You guys ate a lot of this wonderful food today from Kill Me Crazy. So he put nuts in things, almonds. There's actually a study that says that if you eat a handful of nuts, it increases your lifespan some significant amount of time. So nuts are good. Are peanuts nuts? Really nuts? No, they're legumes. So we want tree nuts. Okay, tree nuts are very good. Color your plate. Get those colors in there. Each color has a superpower. And if you don't get a variety, you might be missing out on something your body needs. So at our house, my husband's here. How many colors do we want on our dinner? 3. Or, if possible, 3 is the minimum. But sometimes we get very excited when we get 5. So get as many as you can. Variety confers abilities. Some of these food, even dark wine, like red wine, has resveratrol, which is actually very good for you. So if you did want to drink wine and you don't have an alcohol problem and you don't have a neurodegenerative condition, all right, and you're responsible, you can have dark red wine, all right? Avoid trans fats. So whenever my husband and I go on vacation, we try to always exercise as much as possible. I can't list all the things that exercise does and why it works, but we don't think about exercise as cancer prevention, do we? So I wanted to throw that to you too. So exercise actually prevents cancer. And this is an older study, but look at that. Breast cancer, colon cancer. A lot of people think they have to exercise excessively. You don't. In my office, I might have them start with 5 minutes a day. What do we say, Susie? We say 10 minutes is the gateway drug to exercise. If you can do 10 minutes of exercise, you might do 15. And pretty soon it might be 20. And oh my gosh, 30? But if I can get you to do 10, if I can get you started with 10, then if you do that every day, that is still going to help. And this is a beautiful study showing that I won't go through it, but basically the lowest mortality rates were if you walked 3 to 4 hours a week. But even if you just did 2 hours a week of walking, strolling with your sweetheart or with your friends, right? Because we got to get the social connection. Then you could actually decrease cardiovascular mortality and all-cause mortality. Sleep is very important. It can actually, if you have sleep issues, it can actually lower your testosterone for men. It's very important. And also cause hypertension, cardiovascular disease. I'm going to show you one more thing, which this is a great, incredible case report. This is a woman came to me, and she had gastrointestinal. She thought she had SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. But I went ahead and did blood work on her. I want you to see how high her cholesterol is. Now, this woman is very, very slender, very, very tiny, very petite, eats a very healthy diet, has excellent nutritional knowledge. And I thought, how is this woman running around with such high cholesterol? How could that possibly be? And so before I gave her anything, what did we do first? We tested, and we found she had SIBO. And so we started treating her SIBO. I gave her a little bit of niacin, not much, a very small amount of niacin, because she did not want to be on a statin. And I kept thinking, in fact, honestly, I thought maybe the labs were wrong. I couldn't believe that this was her labs, right? Look what happened next. She improved dramatically. And then once the SIBO was gone, that was about, I could probably see when I'd have to go back and see, oh yeah, that was in the space of about 4 months. And then when the SIBO was completely gone, again, I'm not giving her a statin, small amount of niacin, look at her cholesterol. So she had a gut dysfunction that caused her to have hypercholesterolemia. She didn't have hypercholesterolemia. And she did great. Again, so in this case, the gut health impacted brain health. We know that. It can impact cardiovascular health, and it can impact musculoskeletal health. Why? Because if you have the wrong bacteria in the gut, it can trigger autoimmunity, like rheumatoid arthritis. There's some more slides on intestinal health. So let's wrap it up. Oh, by the way, anger increases the risk of MI by 230%. So whatever you have to do to get rid of anger, somebody told me you can take ice and throw it against a wall. Has anybody ever done that? I want to try that. Just get ice and throw it against a wall because it won't hurt anything. There you go. Throw ice against a wall. Outside. Ice. Yes, increases the risk of MI 230%. We'll go back. Heart attack. Yes, I'm so sorry. Thank you. Myocardial infarction. Heart attack. Those that are the most angry tend to have the highest death rates. Increases atrial fib and ventricular arrhythmias. Okay. This is Larry's family. They are very connected. His parents are 93 and 94. Costco won't even let his dad win Employee of the Month again because he wins it too often. I think they took him off the list. He loves working at Costco. He's going to be 94 in December. But see, part of it is look how connected they are. Look at their family. They're not fighting with each other. They love each other. When you want to exercise, we're out cycling. My best friend likes to cycle. I don't cycle. I want to be with my best friend. I learn to cycle. That's what you have to do. Try to exercise in nature. Exercise with other people. And I'm going to tell you right now, fish oil helps almost every piece of cardiovascular risk. So fish oil is great. In fact, all-cause mortality drops with fish oil. So eat your fish. Evaluate for extras. These are some things that have benefit, but I don't put everybody on it right away. So in summary, how many more miles do you want to go? And most importantly, are you going to enjoy yourself? Because I want you to enjoy yourself. And I'm going to tell you right now that you can eat fabulous food like you did today. Delicious, yummy, crunchy, texture, color, all of that. You don't need to eat that crap that's out there. It's not even real food. Eat these foods, and this will feed your body what you need, okay? Remember the desire. You got it? Diet, exercise, sleep, intestinal health, relationships, relaxation, stress reduction. And then if you need extras, you might need pharmaceutical help, that's okay. If you do, find out what nutrients you're being robbed from and add those back or test for them. And then what about accountability? So accountability is great. Have an accountability partner. In our practice, we like people to come back for labs. Why? Because I need patients? I don't need patients. I got lots of patients. I love my patients. But when you come back, we can do benchmarking. We can see, are you still on track, or do we need to have a talk about things? All right? So come back and let's see what's going on. Maybe we can decrease your supplements. Maybe we need to give you a talking to. Right, Susie? We'll give you a talking to. We'll get you back on track. And then these are some of the diets. This is the new pyramid. The old pyramid had bread at the base. Don't even get me started on that. But I love the base of this pyramid. What's down there? Kids, people dancing, having a good time. Families eating together. People walking. Kids playing. So that should be the base of our pyramid. Activity, socializing. And then lots of whole fruit and vegetables. And then at the very top, we had processed food. Even wine's up there, but it's at the top. Start at the base. And I have a saying, it goes, if it comes in a bag or a box, what do I always say to my patients? And my patients here and there, it'll put you in a bag or a box, a body bag or a casket. I always say, if God meant for us to sit all day, we've had feet growing out of our butt cheeks. But we don't. We're supposed to move. I mean, look at these long legs. Look what they can do. And our back, when you stop and think about it, all the stuff we can do, and we're sitting in front of a computer like this. We got to get out there and move. Got to move and see what God did with us, okay? All the benefits that happen. Sleep is very important. The gut health is super important. And build a community around yourself. Think of health as a communicable disease, right? There's new interest in peer-led health programs. You're going to see a lot of that going on. And we've changed the culture. Cigarette smoking is taboo now. Everybody's into smoothies. And people, like Phil, having restaurants that can quickly give us healthy food. almost fast food, but in a very healthy way is what we want. Jogging became very important, CrossFit, cycling, yoga. What are the challenges? E-cigarettes. We still got to get off of those. Cellular phone use. I can tell you neck pain from cellular phone use. The radiation that comes from cellular phone use. Sitting is the new smoking. And then the increase in suicides. Now, why is that happening? Because we're isolated. Because we got to reach out. We got to be connected. And I love it. My patients sometimes come to see me, and sometimes they do phone calls, and that's okay. But some of them will say to me, I just want to come see you. I just feel better when I see you. And that's a connection. And you know, in our practice, what do? We always give people hugs. We couldn't do that during COVID. I missed it. People need that. When you hug someone, you get a boost of dopamine. All right. So engage in what I call collective courage. What is that? That's when you get your friends together and you decide to do something new together. Sometimes it's scary to do these things by yourself. But when you bring someone along, you're helping them and you get that collective courage. All right. And then you can always evaluate for extras. All medications disrupt the normal process of the body, and that may mean we do need supplements. But in my experience, most benefits probably need magnesium at night. Fish oil is either eat a lot of salmon or take some fish oil. Most people need D3 with K2, very important. CoQ10, B complex, and probiotics are not always necessary. I'm not one somebody who thinks you always need them. But if you're going to be on antibiotics, it's probably a good idea to take probiotics. So that's it. What is your why? This is what I call the three legs of the successful change. One is, what is your why? Why do you want to be healthy? Think about that. We did that exercise in the beginning. What do I want for my life? How many more years do I want to live? What do I see myself 5 years from now? What kind of things do I want to be doing? Think about that. And then that becomes your why. Like, why do you want to be healthy? What are you going to use your good health for? And then make a commitment. Get a partner. Use an app that keeps you accountable. See your doctor for benchmarking, because you're going to need to stay committed. And then you got to have belief. And we spend a lot of time in our practice telling patient stories about other patients. I just did that today. Told you, those are real patients, those are real labs. Those are just 2, and I got a lot of them. These are the mavericks that led the way, that helped me believe in functional medicine. So I stayed in there with it. And I want you to hear their stories too someday too. Because I've got some of my patients who have beautiful stories here, and they could share those stories. Very successful. So that's it. Thank you so much. And like I said, if you do take your capsules, we can retest you if you want to be retested. If you had a pale color, we'll see if your color is bright red. And with that, I want to say thank you so much. Does everybody know the DESIRE? All right, well, good. You're leaving with something you can work on. That's good. What is the best way to test for gluten sensitivity? Is genetic testing the most? I don't think so at all. All right. So I think the genetic testing gives you the risk of gluten sensitivity. But the best way to do it, the actually best way, is to eliminate gluten completely. And you want to try to honestly do it for about 6 weeks, honestly, because you want to go at least 2 half-lives. The longer you eliminate it, the better the chance you'll see a difference. And then add the gluten back and see if you notice anything. Now, the problem with that, though, is you may have an inflammatory response that you don't really notice. I mean, some people, believe it or not, are like, I know a person here right now who has issues and never complains about them, is very strong and tolerates a lot. So sometimes if you're very tolerant of conditions, you might not notice anything. Other people are very, very sensitive. So you'll know. If you're the kind of person that's very tolerant and just goes on with it, you might want to have testing done. So the best testing is to do an IgG test that is very extensive. And so we have some of those tests that you can do if you ever want to do that. So does a gluten sensitive person need to avoid rice and corn as well? So sometimes they do, but generally rice does not have gluten, but corn has something that's really bad. Do you guys know what it is? Glyphosate. Yeah, and glyphosate is like having a jackhammer to your gut lining. Pokes holes in it. And there is probably some organic corn maybe in South America that doesn't have glyphosate. So if you had an organic, non-GMO corn, maybe you could eat it. But you know what I say about a corn kernel? I'm going to tell you right now. I'm going to tell you. Oh, yeah. So a corn kernel is nothing, because we make sugar from corn, right? And we don't need sugar. Sugar is the devil. I didn't have that slide, but just so you know, it is the devil. So you make corn syrup, which is making our young 11-year-olds have liver transplants, okay? So corn syrup is horrible for you. It's terrible. It's cancer's favorite food, and it increases the risk of Alzheimer's disease. So why would you eat corn? Now, the white part of the corn is like the sugar part. So I always say that a corn kernel is nothing more than a sugar cube with a yellow jacket that you poop out. So the only part that has color is the yellow, and that's filling up all the, what are they called? Where all the treatment plants, the sanitation, complete treatment plants, I think. So there's a lot of corn in that. So actually trying to stay from corn is good. All right, what could be a reason for a sudden onset of rheumatoid arthritis? I have seen that before. That could be, I'm always interested in our practice, Susie, I'd be like, always, what was happening right before you got the rheumatoid arthritis? Did you have a gut infection? Did you have a mouth infection? Because that could be a nidus for that. Stress can do it. Stress is one of the biggest ways to poke, just like glyphosate can poke holes in the intestinal lining. And so those tests can be done. Some people have a genetic susceptibility to it, but the whole point is if we can find the root cause that we can change, that's better than having to go on meds. And the other thing I'll say about autoimmune disease too is you want to try to catch the horse before the horse leaves the barn. So the sooner you try to find the root cause, you can actually treat it before it gets really bad. There are points, unfortunately, where, if it's been ongoing for a long time, it's still good to treat, intestinal permeability because you don't want to have a second autoimmune disease or third. But, it's good to get tested for that. There is one condition, I'll tell you, if you have chemotherapy, sometimes chemotherapy we know damages the gut lining, and sometimes that's a harder one to treat. So chemo could be a cause for autoimmune disease. And the oncologists actually recognize that. They know that that's a cause. Does Lexapro and Adderall rob the body of any nutrients? Absolutely. So I always want to try to, if I do prescribe those kind of medications, I want to give somebody the least amount to get the job done, and hopefully for the limited amount of time. Sometimes people go through something difficult and they're going to go on antidepressant. I don't have a big problem with that, especially if we try other things and they don't work. But I've seen in almost all the children that are on Adderall, anything that, if you think about spins that citric acid cycle really fast, what are they going to deplete themselves of? Bees. And almost everybody needs bees. So bees they're water soluble, so you don't store them, and they are the worker bees. So if you're not on a good bee complex, that's important. In the years ago, before we had all the cool cardiac drugs, you know how they used to treat cardiac disease? B vitamins. Because B vitamins are, now you guys know why, don't you? Because they help the mitochondria, and we want the muscle of the heart to be able to beat, so they got to have strong mitochondria, and without Bs, in that diagram I showed you, you can't make ATP. So CoQ10 and Bs. Any natural ways to improve ADHD? There are some ways. What about flu shots and COVID shots? Well, I might skip that question. But I'll tell you, in our practice, we didn't have anybody die from COVID, and many of our patients did not get the vaccine. I do think the vaccine was very helpful, and I certainly promoted it for elderly patients. But what about get your D up? What about getting your zinc up? Remember what I was saying, do the foundational things first. Do those. And I always tell people, if you've had the flu and it really knocked you out and knocked you on your tail, then you should probably get the flu vaccine. But if you get the vaccine, get it when you're feeling well. Your body should only get one vaccine at a time. We don't usually get one infection on top of another infection. In fact, those patients, like Lyme patients, have lots and lots of long-term problems. So if you do get a vaccine, try to make sure you go get it when you're feeling well. If the date to get it is tomorrow and you're coming down with a cold, change the date. You need to go into it feeling well, and then don't hang out with people. That's a day not to be sociable, because you don't want to pick anything up while you're trying to mount a response to the vaccine. That's the reason for a vaccine after all, right, is to mount an immunologic response. So you want to be able to do that, and being sick isn't a good time to do that. So, all right, any other questions? Anybody have another question? Yes?
Can you say the name of the Alzheimer's book that you recommended?
Yes, so there's two. So there's Dale Bredesen, Bredeson. He's come out with lots of books, and try to get the most recent one because he's made some changes. And he's learning a lot of things. And then the other guy that I have so much respect for is Richard Isaacson. And I love his story because he was about to get thrown out of, the American Academy of Neurology, because he believed that you could prevent it. And the other neurologists were saying, you're going to make people feel bad. You're going to make people think they caused their own Alzheimer's. It's like, that's not my intention. My intention is to try to change things and try to help. And so he did it anyway. So and that means he's brave. And he has courage, and so I really respect him. So his name's Richard Isaacson.
Thank you. With the red, you said dark red wine for the Reserve, so would that be like a cab over Pinot Noir?
Yeah, absolutely. So the question is, what kind of wine is probably best? I used to have this memorized. I think it's a Pinot Noir, probably a Cabernet, but the darker the better. And I'll just put a plug in for Italian and Spanish wines. So the interesting thing is, if you've ever been with an Italian, like I'm married to an Italian who they tend to be kind of stubborn, just so you know. Is he still here? But I love that. Well, what I love this story is that they will treat the vineyards with pesticides, right? And you don't want that. But guess who doesn't treat them with pesticides? The Italians are like, my father, he does it like this, and that one does it, and I'm not going to use it. We did it for 1,000,000 years. We're not doing it anyway. White, sweetheart? We don't have to. Yeah. We know how to do it without pesticides. So a lot of those old world kind of countries that are making wine, they don't want the new ways. And that's good for us because they are often not using pesticides. It's not to say that New World wouldn't, but you want to try to get a pesticide-free or organic wine if you can. So if you can do organic wine, and the darker, the better, the darker. The smaller the grape, the better. Yeah. Anything else? And unfortunately, white wine does nothing except make you feel good for a couple of seconds. We don't know of any benefit from white wine. All right, I think that's it. Thank you so much for our host for getting us together. And I want to thank you all for coming. And obviously I have a lot of information. I hope I didn't overwhelm anyone. But yes, they have something. They're going to pull the winner. And anyone that wants to retest their saliva to see if they're, just come see me and I'll take care of that for you, okay?